Alright, good morning. It is 11:39 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, June 20th, 2017. And I'm just going to make a quick little video. I'm doing this live, so everything that you're seeing, I'm seeing. Just thought I'd take a look over here on the USGS. That's earthquakes.usgs.gov. If you're watching this video on YouTube, it's best viewed in full screen, so if you can, go ahead and switch to full screen so you can see the detailed information a little clearer. I'll try to enunciate this text here if you can't see it. So anyway, over here in the last 24 hours, gold dots represent earthquakes that the USGS reports on in the last 24 hours. And so there's been a continuing swarm here in the Midwest at the oil and gas pumping operations, fracking operations, as pressure is moving from up in this area, up here in Alaska and Vancouver Island. There's a significant 4.3 right here with a tsunami warning. This area in here is the Juan de Fuca plate. This is the Pacific plate out here. This is the North American plate on this side. This area from here to approximately down in here is known as the Cascadia subduction zone. And there's been an ongoing slow slip event as these two plates pass by each other, as well as subducting underneath. The Juan de Fuca is subducting underneath, and there's some subduction going on this side as well. This fracture. This is about 600-mile stretch right here. There have been microquakes or tremors that happen with the slow slip event once it starts. Sometimes, you know, a few hundred a day. And so over here on the Pacific Seismic Network, we're going to look at their map. As you can see, I have this going all the way back to May 9th. And we can click forward day by day and watch the tremors, microquakes, move up and down through this Cascadia subduction zone as this slow slip event happens. And so we're just going to go through. It'll go silent for a day or two, and then it'll kick back up in the north region, and then sometimes it'll jump back down here to the south. So back and forth through this area. It goes from north to south to central, then north to south to central, back and forth up in this region. So I'm going to click through a few more days. I'm going to bring us to current. So Vancouver Island, still it's migrated north, and then watch it continue, and it jumps back down to the south and the north, and then it jumps all the way down to the south, back to the north and the south, moving towards the central. So we're all the way up into May 25th now. It'll go silent for a day or two, then it'll swarm back down, all the way down into California. Then silent on the 30th of May, back at the Oregon-California border and central at Washington. June 1st, silent on June 2nd, a big swarm right in the middle on June 3rd, silent on the 4th, back up to the north on the 5th, silent on the 6th, down to the south on the 7th, silent on the 8th, silent on the 9th, and then finally again it starts back up on the 10th. That 2 days on the 8th and the 9th is when I get nervous, when this slow slip tremors stop, because that indicates that the plate, that these plates are locked. And so as we're seeing on the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network, these tremor maps are jumping back and forth from down in here to up in here as the plates move past each other and push into each other. And so we'll go back to the 10th. It finally started again. went silent again on the 11th, the 12th, the 13th. So there was another 3 days where I was holding my breath. Once again, when it stops is when it's an indication that the plates are locked or stuck. And so this side would build up pressure, and then finally, like a spring, it'll snap. Usually a couple of weeks after the tremors stop, or the slow slip event stops. The scientists had said that the slow slip stopped months ago, but it hasn't. I've been watching it. A lot of other people have been watching it. Dutch Sense has been watching it. It's continuing. So now we'll move through to the 15th. Kind of slows down, stops on the 16th, the 17th, the 18th, the 19th. So now we're at 4 days. I've been holding my breath over this thing. It's like, oh crap, it stopped. Because once it stops again, that's when the clock starts ticking for a major seismic event in this region. What's known amongst the scientists as a mega thrust earthquake is possible. If it happens on land, it could be hazardous for the infrastructure here that is not designed for that size of seismic activity. If it happens out here in the water, well then obviously you have the possibility of a tsunami. It just depends on the size of the quake and the location, but anywhere in here. So once again, going back, the last tremors were on the 15th. It's now June 20th, so it's been almost 5 days I've been waiting. And it's, you know, because again, the clock starts ticking once it stops. We've got about 2 weeks before we see that large earthquake activity. So the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, nothing. And then finally, we're into the 20th, and I have not seen anything. So I'm actually holding my breath once again. So we went from 1 day stretches of nothing and reoccurrence to 2 days of nothing and reoccurrence to 3 days to 4 days and now 5 days. So let's hold our breath, but let's hope for maybe the seismic tremors, these micro quakes, to just continue to relieve that pressure as this slow slip event is happening. Go back to our map. Let's take a look at some more of the U.S. Again, oil and gas, hydraulic fracturing, wastewater pumping operations swarming out as that pressure was moving down from up in here through Yellowstone down into Southern California and then across the North American continent, or the Craton, through the area known as the New Madrid seismic zone that runs along like this. Let me switch this to satellite real quick. I think it'd be easier to see the topography, so you can recognize the New Madrid seismic zone, which goes down in here, and it kind of curls around and goes back up the east coast. That pressure moved along from up in here in the northwest and the west coast out in here, pit stopping at the weak point, which is the fracking operations, the gas and oil well pumping operations, wastewater pumping operations. And then also today, about an hour ago, right here, a magnitude 3. That's pretty interesting. That's a good sized little earthquake for this area, but there's something interesting about this area down in here in Lafayette, Georgia. There is a series of old volcanoes right here. And again, this is the edge of the New Madrid fault that runs up here into the east coast, northeast. Let's take a look at that on. So what you can do is download a copy of Google Earth. Just highlight and copy and paste the coordinates of this earthquake. We'll take a look at it and just see what's there on Google Earth. My Google Earth is running slow. It takes up a lot of memory on this laptop, so you have to bear with me as it loads. But you can take those coordinates from any earthquake that the USGS lists, or some other sites as well. I'll leave links in the description box for all the different research tools that you can use. We'll drop this down here, copy and paste it into the search bar, and it's going to take us right down onto that earthquake in South Carolina, or Georgia. I believe there was an earthquake in South Carolina too, but it was real small. I'll have to double check on that. So right here is where that earthquake has happened in Georgia. As you can see, it's a populated area. Some people might have felt some light rumbling or vibration. I don't know if the 3.0 isn't that big, but big enough that the USGS reported it. So let's take a look at the topography as we zoom out. This is right at the South Carolina border. The volcanoes are down in this region, down in here. Wow, that's pretty interesting. So anyway, this is the kind of stuff I sit around and look at when I'm not working. There's one up here, North Kentucky. Nothing really significant there as far as pumping operations that I know of. It's mostly just a kind of semi-rural area, but it is right along the New Madrid Fault as it goes up in here through the Appalachians. So we can take a look at one of these out here in Oklahoma, Kansas. I'm almost sure that every one of these are at or close to pumping operations. I'm positive this one is. We can take a look at this one in Chandler, Oklahoma. We'll grab the coordinates for that. Drop it into our Google Earth. We'll take a look around and see what's there. So in the Midwest, they've been doing hydraulic fracturing and gas and oil extraction operations on the order of thousands and thousands and thousands of these pumping operations. And so there's been a phenomenon where the earthquakes that are happening in this area are happening very close to these pumping operations. Scientists are finally starting to take a look at that, because essentially they've drilled thousands and thousands of little puncture holes in the Earth's crust, thousands of feet down. They pump down wastewater and chemicals down into the ground, and that fractures the Earth underneath and releases the natural resources that are trapped within the Earth. But they're doing this in a seismic region. It's just from bad data from their geologists telling them that it was okay to do this. And they literally have blanketed the whole Midwest with these thousands and thousands of pinpricks, if you will, in the Earth's crust in the Midwest. And they're finding that as seismic pressure moves across the plate to the East Coast and out to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, as it normally has and does for thousands of years now, it's making a pit stop at this point of least resistance. It's a weak spot in the crust due to these wells. We'll look back down in here. I don't really see anything significant offhand as far as oil and gas, but we can take a look a little closer and see. Doesn't look like much of anything here. Usually I'll look within 6 to 10 miles of the epicenter of the earthquake, so I'm not even close to zoomed out yet. Let me zoom out a little more. I'm going to look 6 to 10 miles. So here's our ruler. We'll draw a line about 6 miles about here, so we can zoom out a little bit more. We'll drop our marker here. Okay, so this is our 6 mile range, 6 to 10 miles, anywhere in here. So we'll take this and get it out of the way. We'll go down, take a look at some of this area. got here? This is a hydraulic wastewater pumping operation, hydraulic fracturing wastewater pumping operation right here. You see that square pad with the storage tanks on the side. This is the price we pay for cheap oil. I say it over and over and over again. You know, I'm not against fracking. I'm not against oil per se. We have to become independent of the Middle East for our energy and resources, but it's just the magnitude and intensity and frequency that they're doing this. Somebody's got a nice little house. Looks like they're building a pond. That'll be pretty sweet. Swimming pool. Take a look at a few more places. This is, you know, within 6-7 miles from the epicenter. This is a hydraulic pumping operation right here. There's your pump equipment in the middle. Your storage tanks out here. And again, I have lots of videos in my earthquake news playlist regarding fracking causing earthquakes. I've said it and I'll say it again. I'm convinced, at least, that fracking causes earthquakes. Let's zoom out. We'll go to the other side, maybe to the south a little bit. It's a little municipality. Pumping operation, storage tanks, square pad. Take a look at a couple more, and then we'll move on to something else. Maybe take a look at a different earthquake. So there you go, guys. Anyway, fracking causes earthquakes. If you haven't done any of your own research, I suggest that you do. So I'm sure of it. They just need to slow down and regroup and figure out a way to you know, do this without causing earthquakes. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, let's jump out of here. Go ahead and close that out. We can take a look at another one. Take a look at the one in Perry. I'm pretty sure you can get a better idea of how these earthquakes are situated, very close to fracking operations. Even in the Midwest, in Colorado, even in Nevada, parts of Arizona, where there's normally earthquakes as pressure moves along the North American plate, wherever they have like geothermal pumping operations or gas and oil well pumping operations, there's earthquakes right there at those weak spots. So let's take a look at the one at Perry, Oklahoma real quick. That happened over the last 24 hours, a small earthquake. We're zooming in and we're passing big fracking operations. So that yellow pin, that's our earthquake, and we don't even have to go 6 to 10 miles out. Obviously, this is like not even 3/4 of a mile from the epicenter. Take a look and see what's right there. On this one we almost get a little bit lucky in that the sun is casting a shadow on the oil pump right there. You see it? There's the shadow. I mean, that's 3/4 of a mile away from the earthquake. So we'll zoom out, take a look around. Again, you're looking for that square pad that looks kind of square. There's one here, 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 here. All of these are fracking operations. Let's go to our 6 to 10 mile range. anywhere in here. Look in all these areas right in here. There you go. What do you know? Think it's just coincidence? Could be. But I don't think so. I'm pretty well convinced that fracking causes earthquakes. These things are literally everywhere. It's crazy. Gee whiz, man. Look at this. Look at this crazy stuff, man. That's what I'm saying. Most people know they're doing it. It's not a big secret. It's not like it's a conspiracy that they're hiding it or anything, but I mean, it's the magnitude and the scale. It's just too much. There's too many fractures in the earth, the little pinpoints or pinpricks. You know, if you took a piece of paper, loose leaf notebook paper, you could essentially fold it and make a water cup. It'll hold water. But if you start picking thousands of little pinpricks through it, eventually it's going to become weak and it's going to tear. You know, maybe that's not a great analogy, but that's kind of what's happening here, folks. These earthquakes are all over the place here every single day. So there's that. We'll zoom out. We'll take a look at some other earthquakes. Maybe go jump over here. Ooh, a big one just now. All the way up here in Iceland, probably. North Iceland. Anyway, earthquakes been happening way up here at both of the poles lately. This one's South Sandwich Islands, but real close to Antarctica. But this is where the action's at this week. All up in this region right here. And we've had large, deep earthquakes happen here. So that pressure is going to push all the way across through fracture zones that run along the plate. It's going to push all the way across, slam into South America and Central America with seismic pressure like a wall, like a wave. Similar to how a tsunami acts, but underneath, deep in the Earth's crust. From large, deep earthquakes that are originating right here. There's a 4.7 south of Fiji at 532 kilometers. So essentially the Earth's crust at this point is, you know, 200 to 300 kilometers thick, and then down underneath the crust, or the mantle or whatever, is what's called the asthenosphere, where it's just molten magma and rock. And the earthquakes that generate that deep down underneath the plate, that push up to the surface, start kind of like, I guess, a chain reaction, but it's more like a seismic pressure transfer, and it transfers along these red lines, which are the plate boundaries, and along faults, you know, that run along the plates, and fracture zones that run along the plate. So this is the Pacific plate right here. So when large, deep earthquakes come from deep down below right here in this Fiji-Tonga region, it transfers to the west along the plate boundaries up into here. It moves around essentially what people call the ring of fire, but it's really the Pacific plate boundary. It moves along the plate boundary and it pushes up here and then into here. It also moves along across the plate through fracture zones. Maybe Google Earth would have been a better option for this, but you can kind of see them here a little bit. The fracture zones that run across the plates. And it transfers that pressure from here all the way across to the east, and it slams into this area like a wave. And so in between the volcanoes, there's several volcanoes. When the volcanoes are not erupting is where we have the earthquake activity adjacent to or at the edges of the various volcanoes in this particular region here, and also over here in the West Pacific. There's volcanoes, chains of volcanoes all along in here. And in between where the volcanoes are erupting is where we have the seismic activity. So we have volcanic and seismic activity working together. but it's all seems to be originating from these areas where the large deep earthquakes happen. So over the last 24 hours, that's what these gold dots are. These are the earthquakes, and they show them over here on this side of the screen, from the newest to the oldest. So this 4.7 here was followed by a 5.0 all the way over here, and then followed further to the west. And it's continued. It's like bubbling up, I guess, like a lava lamp. I hate to use that as an analogy, but you know, it bubbles up to the surface and then transfers along the plate boundaries. So we're going up to current. See it moving from the east to the west, and then up to in Japan. It pushes all the way along the plate boundaries. So areas that are not showing earthquake activity are likely showing volcanic activity, and if not volcanic activity, then those areas are what we call the silent zones that are prime for more seismic activity. So we're looking in Vanuatu, the Solomon Islands, over here towards Papua New Guinea, but to the east, and then right here in Papua New Guinea, possibly down here in the Banda Sea, but definitely up in this region here we should see some seismic pressure move in the next 24 to 48 hours towards Taiwan and the Philippines in here. And the most concerning is right in this region here in Japan, possibly Guam and the Mariana Islands as well. Should see some seismic pressure. I had forecasted for this earthquake here, for this earthquake here, for these earthquakes right here. Over on my Earthquake Watcher Facebook page, I posted screenshots and drew in arrows where I thought the earthquakes would happen next. In fact, we can take a quick peek at that. Excuse me, housekeeping.
Look at my post from a couple of days over here on my Facebook page. Hope this is not boring or I'm rambling. These are the pressure transfer maps that I created over a year ago, probably 2 years ago, a year ago. So the earthquake that we're looking at here in Fiji, this shows the trajectory. These red arrows I drew with my phone on a map. I had to split it in two because it wouldn't fit all on one screenshot, and I literally drew arrows to show where the seismic pressure transfers to. So we'll scroll down here to yesterday's post. Come on. Sorry, the computer is so slow. I need a new computer. Alright, so here's the post that I put 24 hours ago, yesterday. The West Pacific forecast, magnitude 4.5 and greater for the next 24 to 48 hours. Screenshot captured at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6/19/27. Gold dots are earthquakes, previous 24 hours, red dots last hour. So this was a screenshot I took yesterday, and then again I drew with my photo editor arrows where I see the most likely areas to experience large earthquake activity over the next 24 to 48 hours. And you can see there's an arrow right here in the Aleutian Islands. There's an arrow right here in Kamchatka, Russia. And then this arrow right here in southern Japan, and also down here in these two areas. And so if we look at our current, you'll see that those areas right there and right in here and right down in here, as well as down in here, were all hit, the exact areas that I had drove these arrows. So that we still got 24 hours to go. This was a 24 to 48 hour forecast essentially. So we're still looking for the northern part of Japan again. I should have drawn an arrow here at the Mariana Islands in Guam, but I didn't. Taiwan in this region, Philippines, and then I also should have drawn some arrows up in here because I think this pressure will continue to push up into here.
So we got Burma, Myanmar, you know, eastern India in this area, Sumatra, western Indonesia to look at still. Down here, just a little while ago before I started making this video, I did go ahead and overlay my screenshot from yesterday with where the earthquakes happened today. You can see that there. And then here's a current screenshot that I took just a little while ago showing that. So there you go. There's that. Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap it up for now. Slow slip event seems like it's quieting down here. While we were making this video, there's a pretty good size 4.0 right up here in Alaska. Again, as pressure is transferring up into here and down into here. But this area is where I'm a little bit concerned, just because it's being squeezed, it's being put under pressure from here as the seismic pressure works its way up down into here. It's being squeezed from both sides, and we have a slow slip event happening, and it's slowed down and stopped for the last 5 days. Again, it could be an indication that the plates are locked, and generally within a couple of weeks after those plates are locked and stop moving is when we have the potential for very significant seismic activity right in here. Everybody knows over the last several days that Yellowstone has been showing seismic activity. You can take a look at that real quick. And we'll turn on the last 7 days of earthquakes. Let's go 30 days. See if we can pull up the Yellowstone earthquakes. Might take a long time to load. Yeah. Well, so anyway, right here was a, come on, 3.0 Yellowstone, Montana. Anyway, you can see the swarms. This is the last 30 days of 2.5 and greater. You can see all that activity. This gives you a path or a semi-fixed trajectory that seismic pressure moves. If you clicked through these from starting all the way down at the bottom, I mean, we're looking at almost 1,200 earthquakes in the last 30 days. If I started at the bottom and clicked from the oldest to the newest, you would see the transfer. You would see the pressure moving in this direction and then moving out to here. You would see that pressure moving from here all around the plate boundary. Move this out of the way. There's so many earthquakes on here that it's literally slowing down the computer to keep up with the graphics. But anyway, if I started all the way down at the bottom at the oldest earthquakes, you would see that they originate here, and then you would see the pressure move along the plate boundary and down into here and then across, and you would see it pop up after an earthquake in this area. You would see it pop up over here with a similar size magnitude in this regions up in here. These earthquakes here push across this plate boundary into here in the Caribbean. It swarms out there. This pressure pushes across to the east, and it also pushes down to the south. And this pressure right here pushes across, and it pushes right into here to Ecuador, Peru, Argentina, Bolivia, and then down to the south in Chile, and then it migrates all the way under the plate or around the plate out here into the South Sandwich Islands, right out here, and eventually out to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So hopefully this gives you guys a good idea and understanding of large deep earthquakes producing large shallow earthquakes, that seismic pressure transfers along plate boundaries, faults, and fracture zones within the various plates, that volcanoes and earthquakes are connected to one another. We can look over here on Volcano Discovery, and it'll show us the current erupting volcanoes. Refresh the page because I was looking at it last night. So all these red ones are currently erupting volcanoes. And if you look at it, it's really similar to the earthquakes on the earthquake map. I'll zoom out a little bit here. Wow, look at that, guys. That's global, last 30 days. And that's just earthquakes of 2.5 and greater. So here's your earthquakes, and here's your map of the volcanoes. I mean, you know, you can see that they are connected. They're one and the same as far as a source of energy from deep within the earth. And so when there's large, deep earthquakes, that pressure moves up to the surface. It transfers in a semi-fixed trajectory, and each one of these volcanoes erupting kind of acts like a pressure relief valve, like a path of least resistance for the seismic energy. It pushes up through the liquid magma up into these, you know, chambers in these volcano regions. Even here in Hawaii, all the pressure all is underneath the earth, deep down in the earth in this region, is pushing up on the plates, and it transfers along this boundary right here. So I hope all this gives you a good idea of how things work. I'm gonna try to not post earthquake stuff on my personal Facebook page, so I created a page on Facebook called Earthquake Watcher. It says the Earthquake Watcher, Mark Mucci, and I'm gonna try to just keep my stuff there and use my personal Facebook page for family and friends and personal stuff. I think people are getting weirded out by all this earthquake business. So if you're interested, you know, share the link to this Facebook page with your friends, and you can follow the page and keep up with the stuff there. Also, if you want, you can follow me on Twitter at Mark Mucci. And as always, hope you will give this video a thumbs up, share it, comment if you want. I'll try to answer your questions or concerns. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Hope everybody has a great week. If anything happens significant, I'll come back. I'll try to make another video. Today's my only day off, so I'll do what I can. Thanks, guys. Ciao.